Okay, first video after a long hiatus. You can see I don't quite sound right, but I'm COVID negative. But the border sure ain't. Omicron is here, and it's like that movie I Am Legend. The Omicron zombies are just pressing hard on the glass. And I think there's been over 300 now detected at the border. And it can't wait to get into New Zealand. So what do we do? What do we do? We've got to figure out how to get there. Okay, we're boostering up some people, but the Omicron tidal wave is right at our door. So this is a bit of a difficult, meaty question. When is it best to have Omicron in New Zealand? Should we just white knuckle it and just see what happens? I don't really think we've got much other options. Will we go back to a lockdown? Well, that is always the card the government's pulled before, but I think this is more shaky this time with Omicron, which seems to have a transmission rate more comparable with measles, or the most highly transmissible diseases we've ever seen. And so, has lockdown work anywhere else? No. Are people going to be quite grumbly about it? I think this would be a hard sell, that we're going to lock down for Omicron because it doesn't seem to work. And I don't know if it'll work here, certainly not level 4 levels. We might need like this, quote, level 5 type situation. Now, what to do? Well, we had DJ Omicron come into the country. He spread a little bit, but it didn't get any far. There's a few other leaks happening at the moment. But at the border, it's 100% pretty much Omicron, and no country has held it out. Countries that seem to have done really badly seem to be battling both Delta and Omicron at the same time. Omicron seems to ratchet up the numbers like crazy. An exponential graph doesn't seem to do it justice. It's straight vertical. And the hospitals seem to be still battling with the severe end, which seems to be predominantly Delta. So what do we do? Well, Fortress New Zealand, we're in a little bit of a luxurious position because Delta is almost at its way out. I wouldn't be surprised if Auckland recorded 0 cases sometime this week. We've been single digits on many times now. We don't seem to be celebrating that, but I think that's an amazing achievement and speaks massively to the value of vaccination for Delta. But Omicron is slippery. It seems to be slipping through the usual checks and balances. Immune escape seems to be very problematic. So of those 360 that have been detected at the border, they are all pretty much vaccinated and PCR tested prior to getting on the plane. And there's still so many of Omicrons being picked up. So I think this is going to be a complete reset of how we change our approach. Omicron, on the good news front, doesn't seem to cause that really bad illness to the same degree. Seems to get to the trachea, but doesn't get into the lungs. So it doesn't seem to be causing ICUs to fill up with ventilated patients. But we don't know what to do. So we're just in this holding period, head in the sand type mentality. Everyone's been on holiday, and I hope people have had a good holiday. But I always find in summer we need some sort of focal point to bring us together. And we had DJ Omicron, but then he came and left and didn't seem to result in many cases. And then it turned to a little bit of shade to Clark Gayford, who tried to get a rapid antigen test. But then the story of no vaccine Djokovic just keeps on giving. Now, I don't understand all the bits and bobs about it, but he's just been deported. And huge saga about him being stuck at the airport for, I think, 6 days now. And what this means going forward, because he didn't have coronavirus, and they wanted him not to enter a city which has almost 100,000 active cases, where there's so many cases that they're going to stop publishing it as widespread, the testing isn't going to be happening, and that the risk was he was coming into the country. So this is kind of a good thing of how is this all flipped up. I mean, for New Zealand, yeah, I think the argument is sound. There's hardly any coronavirus. There's no Omicron pretty much in the community, apart from one sort of case that's they're investigating. But for Novak Djokovic, he must be thinking, well, the risk is surely me stepping foot in Melbourne, you giving me Omicron coronavirus. But of course there is a good argument, yeah, if he does get coronavirus, he's not vaccinated, he's spreading it, and he's high profile and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, that seems to have been buried now because he's been deported. Although someone did explain to me, you don't know how this impacts the whole tennis world, because if they bring in mandates of not only first dose, second dose, but booster dose, he might not be able to play in many places again. And apparently he's tied for the 20 Grand Slam wins, so the highest of all time. Anywho. So in New Zealand, yeah, head in the sand approach seems to be working. It seems like the health system has been quietly falling apart, despite us having reducing amount of coronavirus, just by the by. So if we wait and hope for a miracle to come along to get things better, that may not happen. And certainly where other countries where they just let it rip and it's going to rip through them, I think the impetus or the amount of financial and resource backing to find a specific Omicron vaccine is probably not going to be there, because why would you? No government who's had Omicron sweep through is going to buy it on first pass. So we might not get a different vaccine or a different therapeutic. We've got the Pfizer one, and we're squeezing that dry, but there is a big gap between doses, so not everyone will be protected for sure. And should we wait while we get more boosters to come in? Okay, but most people around the vax-a-thon was October, so a lot of people got vaccinated then. So bring that 4 to 6 months ahead. Now we're talking April. April's typically going to be the flu season, and just everyone is more sick and the hospital's under the pump. So are you better to have Omicron now while it is warmer, the hospital should be less under the pump? Or do you wait and wait? I mean, maybe if we wait, Omicron will burn through Australia, particularly Sydney and Melbourne, and they'll actually see a downtrend to the curve. Will that make us feel better? Maybe not, but what to do? So the booster rate is going to slowly edge up because of that big time gap. So we are really in a really interesting spot. One option is you don't actively get Omicron into society, but you just tolerate a level of Omicron. And who knows, maybe we'll bring back that flatten the curve idea, because we never really flattened the curve, we completely destroyed it. And with Omicron, I don't think that's going to be possible, seeing what we're seeing overseas. So it might be a case that we have to have some sort of restrictions, whether you want to call it a lockdown or not. But the traffic light system, well, is that going to go as quickly as it came? I think Auckland's just going to stay in permanent orange or red. But we don't know. Probably next week, I think most people will be realizing, oh, I've got to go back to school. The politicians will be back. There'll be a bit more debate about this. But rock and a hard place for us at the moment. But I think if anything, people like their summers, and if you're going to lock down anything, how about we lock down winter? Because we're going to save a whole lot of other infectious disease spread, like influenza potentially. But can we even go back to a lockdown? Who knows? The health system probably hasn't changed much since before, and it's probably creaking more now than previous. So time isn't going to help us that much. Anyway, we'll watch if there's any more Omicron leaks today, and we'll see if Auckland can get to 0. If it does, I think that will be a major achievement. Kids are getting vaccinated this week too, so there is some good news happening. But yeah, Omicron is waiting there, and shall we white knuckle it? Maybe it's our only option.